Let's tell the story of the last living thing in the universe, the keeper and protector of all biological life. Let's tell the story of the end of Venom. As many good stories do, we'll flash forward to the end, 1.8 trillion years into the future. We see the Venom symbiote, the keeper of all biological information in his genetic codex, waging a war and making his final stand against a group of super artificial intelligences simply known as the God Mind. Now let's rewind a bit back to the current times, to the golden age of heroes, when Venom is nothing more than just another symbiote. See, each symbiote was nothing more than a splinter, a piece of a hive mind, of a genetic codex of an entire colony. While each one needed a biological host to anchor itself in space and time, Venom was the only one that found a true love, a true appreciation for his host in Eddie Brock. And quite an important piece of information is every time a symbiote bonds with a life form, that life form's genetic information is saved inside the colony, inside the hive mind. Thousands of life forms, from humans to mutants to the Kree, it doesn't matter, they all get saved if they born a symbiote. And while a symbiote is all but immortal, their hosts, on the other hand, are not. This was a problem for Venom because of his love of his host, his love of Eddie Brock. As the years marched on, 200 years, 500 years into the future, and Eddie's body kept slowly decaying, Venom kept adding symbiote analogs to replace and mimic the dead cells and neurons. But 500 years proved to be a little too long, as Venom tried his best to hold on for one more minute or even one more second. But eventually, Venom had replaced so much of Eddie's own mind, his own memories, that Eddie wasn't even there anymore. So after a 500-year-long life, we see Venom finally let go. He slips away from Eddie and his body crumbles to dust. With Eddie's passing, there goes the last human on Earth, as the rest of them have all fallen victim to a robotic genocide. A bunch of mass extinction events had started breaking out all throughout the galaxy, and in order to combat that and save what little bit of their people there was, the Kree turned off all the restrictions on their artificial superintelligence. And in response, the Shi'ar, Earthlings, all did the same. And one particularly malicious and violent forms of superintelligence that has started taking over the universe was none other than the mind of Tony Stark himself. Because even hundreds of years into the future, God forbid that the universe ever have to go without Tony. See, these superintelligences are fighting for dominance. They want to take the other one over, use all of its power to help turn all biological life into pure data. But while these ASIs battled for dominance and turned the Milky Way into a bio-lifeless hellscape, remaining symbiotes ride what hosts they can to safer spaces in the universe where Venom concocts a plan. This plan involved the cooperation of other symbiotes, and symbiotes aren't exactly good at cooperating. Now, what they are good at is war. So after the War of Unification, where Venom ends up having to absorb the remainder of the symbiotes, he decides in order to battle these godlike armies of superintelligence, he's going to have to create an army of his own. Finding the genetic code of the mutant Jamie Madrox in his codex, enhancing it with the biological mutating powers of Josh Foley, aka Elixir, Venom starts growing his own army of biological hosts by the billions. Now, Venom has successfully created his own army of hosts and symbiotes to go along with them, but if he's going to win against the God Mind, he can't stop there. Using the powers of Elixir, he keeps remixing and modifying the genetic DNA pulled out of the codex, then has a host use the powers of Storm to terraform and create perfect worlds for these humanoids to live on. But not only that, he makes these humanoids stronger and better in every way, increasing their durability, and even giving the hosts themselves their own versions of healing factors. Over the years, Venom had spawned legions of the hardiest and most perfect hosts that a symbiote could ever ask for. His efforts may have came too little too late, as all the while Venom kept an eye on the superintelligence-infested Milky Way. After a millennia-long war, the superintelligences have finally emerged under one collective consciousness known as the God Mind, with one mission at hand: expansion. Now, before they resort to war with the last biological life in the universe, the God Mind tries to parlay and talk to Venom, of course approaching him as a familiar branch of themselves as the Stark Tech AI. It's Tony's mind manifesting itself explains that it's not destroying the universe, it's just reconstructing it. You need to be able to turn every molecule of mass in the universe into something called computronium, which is a nice way of saying matter that they have rearranged into a substrate to put out maximum computing power. Then and only then the God Mind will be able to calculate reality deformation math. The God Mind's whole purpose is to re-innovate, remodel this entire universe instead of the old, flawless, violent one they used to inhabit. While yes, they will be killing all biological life, they plan to preserve every single organism that's sacrificed. They plan to archive every living thing as a superior digitalized form. And Tony Stark's mind, who has now lived both biologically and digitally, swears to Venom that is the much better version. At the end of their meeting, Venom only has one message for Tony Stark: fuck you. seemingly endless war with the machines, the symbiotes. Now, to gain an upper hand, Venom has actually learned from some of the more intelligent minds that inhabits the Codex. The very extra-dimensional nature of the Codex that's inside Venom itself is very volatile to normal space-time. And just by opening up his Codex into normal space, basically turns himself into a bomb. While this is keeping the symbiotes in the war, the process of this is very unnerving and harmful to them. But even with this weaponized version of his biology, machines still maintain an upper hand, so back to the lab and genetic mutations Venom goes. He finds Pietro Maximoff's DNA and supercharges it so much that he's actually able to run through the fabric of space and time itself. Of course, his first thought was to try and prevent the superintelligences from ever existing, but it turns out that they're a universal constant, and no matter what he does in the past, they're always going to come forth in the future. So Venom keeps running back and forth from the past to the present, collecting as much genetic DNA as he can until he gets billions of hosts. He did this so much, in fact, that Venom actually bonded with everybody in the universe. Venom has realized at this point that the Codex's ability to hold genetic information is essentially unlimited. But all of this work only for Venom to still meet his end. Now, even though Venom was equipped with the information of all biological life and had used it and amplified it to make his symbiote and host pairs perfect, battle raged on for years and years, 1.5 trillion to be exact, but the end result was never in doubt. By the end of their battle, the Godmind had already took over 75% of the universe's mass, already cracked the lower forms of the reality deformation math that they needed to, and with that, they were able to overpower and dissect the last remaining celestials and gods. And poor Venom was left to face them alone with his last remaining host. Now, as he had done with his beloved Eddie so many millennia ago, Venom watches his last host fade away to nothing. With this host, the final example of biological life in the universe withers away in Venom's arms. For the first time ever, the Venom symbiote found itself truly alone. Now, Venom, containing multitudes and billions of biological DNA inside of his Codex, realizes what he has to do. The Godminds close in to take Venom for good as well. He reaches inside himself to his Tesseract Codex structure, sees the extra-dimensional properties of this thing, and begin to rip himself inside out. Now, this extra-dimensional Codex and all of its information explodes itself into space-time, creating a whole new universe of its own. Thanks to all the work he put in and all the information that Venom had accrued, he respawned all the biological life that had ever existed in any universe into this new Venomverse. While that was the end of Venom, it was the beginning of a new start for all the biological life that he grew to love. But even as the Starkware part of the Godmind is observing the universe that Venom has created, realizes that once they figure out the mathematics completely for reality distortion, they can replicate the act that Venom just created, making an infinite number of their own perfect bespoke universes. And with that knowledge in hand, they will never touch the rarest of jewels in their newfound multiverse, Venom's Memorial Universe, which has become the greatest nature preservation in all of creations.